Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this session, the VY session, our special series on the Swarved. The Swarved, as our regular listeners would know, is an encyclopedia and a treasure trove of spiritual secrets, known only to those who have actually practiced and gone on the path of higher spirituality. It is, by all extent, it is a voluminous book with verses that spell out in great and lucid detail the journey of spirituality, and for those, no matter which movement or path they have followed over the years, if they are seeking a higher goal, a higher level, a higher truth, you would see that the Swarved has got everything spelled out in such lucid detail that it tells you the journey as if you were taking a spiritual journey in very well graded steps. You would understand the milestones you would achieve. You would understand how to go ahead, whom to be in touch with, and how to take this journey of yours forward, not into the unknown, but into a wonderful realm of spiritual secrets. Joining us today from Australia is Abhinav Kishorji. Welcome to this program, Abhinavji.
Thank you, Raghavji. Thank you for the introduction.
Great. Abhinavji is an engineer who works in the IT sector in Australia, and having interacted with him many a time in the recent past, I have a high regard for not just his authenticity, but his caliber, his immense understanding of the secrets of Swarved from a perspective of a practitioner. So thank you for joining us, Abhinavji. And I'm Raghav, so I'm hosting this particular session of the program from Noida in Delhi, NCR, India. Taking today's sessions forward, may I now inform you that we shall be starting the main discussion of the day with Abhinavji, who is a young practitioner of Vihangam Yoga, and like all the other speakers that I have interacted with in my personal life, he's a wonderful person, and he's a conversation with Abhinavji is like a pathway, is like a portal into Vihangam Yoga, the wonderful realm of Vihangam Yoga. So at any point of time, if you have questions for Abhinavji or me, please do put them on slido.com. So that's slido.com. You would have seen that particular link on the broadcast message that you'd have received. So please feel free to sign in, and you need a sign in. You just need to post in your questions. Once you go to slido.com, you can type in VYGOS. So thank you, Abhinavji, for taking out time for this particular session. And how's it like in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Raghavji. Right back to you. You're constantly inspiring us to do a better job as well and try to be a better practitioner every day. In Sydney, Australia, we meet people from all over the world, and we're very lucky that we get to spend time talking about different concepts. It's very interesting to see how we're all kind of looking for the same things in life and how we converge toward ultimately the same kind of ocean of truth, in different ways, but in a very ultimate way, we kind of reach there. So hopefully our discussion today will kind of illuminate some of these things in the context of the Swarved and the author of Swarved. So really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you.
Absolutely, Abhinavji. So if I might begin and, cut to the chase, as it were, and ask you straight away, just for the benefit of first-time listeners, what is the Swarved, and why is it not as well known as the Vedas of of antiquity?
Sure. So it's a great question. And, for me personally, I started on my spiritual journey let's say 10 years ago when, I sat in on a session about Vihangam Yoga, and I heard from a very good speaker and very experienced practitioner who goes by Gopal Rishiji. And he'll probably not like that I've exposed him as, my first point of contact. But so I sat in on a session which he delivered in Sydney, and at the time that kind of started a path for me personally, where I started to dive into different books, from different books of the Indian philosophies to the Western philosophies, all whilst I was practicing Vihangam Yoga. And what I kind of started to notice was, in my practice of Vihangam Yoga, the only book that really was resonating with me at one point was the Swarved. And I think it's not that the other books didn't resonate with me. It's that the Swarved resonated most strongly with the practice which I was doing. And I think that's a very key point for everyone listening to understand, that the Swarved is a transcription of practical experience. So it's not an intellectual kind of undertaking. It's not something which you read. It's something which you experience. And if I could sort of try and understand, and look into why it's not more widely known, I would say it's because it's kind of, greatness begets greatness. Some of the most established people in different philosophies of yoga who have ultimately reached Vihangam Yoga, the path of Vihangam Yoga, when they read the Swarved, they can see how even one verse is kind of engrossed and encapsulating a lot of spiritual depth and a lot of experience. So the Swarved is a transcription of experience. It's split into 5 mandals, as we refer to them. And in each of these mandals, there's between 10 to 18 chapters and between 500 to 1,000 verses, a total of 3,137 verses, in which just in rhyming couplets, we hear from the founder of Vihangam Yoga. So the person who wrote the Swarved, Sadguru, Anant Shri Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj. I guess as we go through this discussion, we'll be able to kind of, understand his journey better, because, in order to understand the Swarved, we really need to understand the person who wrote the Swarved and why he wrote it. When we do studies of literature and philosophy, we first study the author, the composer, the context they wrote it in. And the Swarved is no different. It's definitely a timeless piece of work, which makes it very unique. But it's also the person who wrote it, if you could call him a person, is utterly unique. And I think it's the uniqueness of all of these different things which make it difficult for it to kind of enter mass culture and popular culture, because it's a very specific journey for very specific kind of seeker. Under the ocean of Swarved, everyone can be present, but you have to experience it to really understand the depths of it, is what I would say. I don't know if you would agree.
Oh, I agree with you fully, Abhinavji. Indeed, the Swarved looks like a manual from another dimension, as it were. And so if you really look at it that way, it's like the stairway to, for those seekers of the truth, I would think. Once they, no matter which path, what meditation they've done earlier, if they've done a fair amount and they feel that they've hit a ceiling or that they're not advancing and they're looking for a breakthrough, I think the Swarved has immense opportunity. It gives them immense opportunity, and it empowers a person because it is so lucid in its detail. There is no way you can escape from what the Swarved, if you understand Hindi, of course, because it is essentially set in Hindi, and it's been translated into English, and you're part of it. So once the translations are complete, I'm sure we will gain more from the Swarved. So from an understanding of the Swarved. So understanding not just the particular the depth that we have in the Swarved, we see that the author, so you've put it very succinctly and you've put it very correctly. So when we're looking at a great contextual treatise like the Swarved, which refers to the ultimate truth, and yet we need to understand in what context it was written before. For example, when I would hear about, long time ago, when I read the Swarved when I was in high school and I was initiated into Vihangam Yoga, I would come across, and my Hindi wasn't as good as it should have been, and probably still it isn't. But I would, for example, listen to the word or hear the word, read the word Purush. So you talk about Param Purush, you talk about references to the Purush, which have also come up on the session today. So I later understood, and my mom informed me that Purush does not is not in any way related to gender. We're really talking about the soul, or an entity like the soul. So Param Purush would be the supreme soul, and when you're referring to Purush, you're not referring to man. You're really referring to the soul. So these are the nuances that once we understand and once we appreciate, our understanding of the Swarved would be more complete. And based on our interactions earlier, I remember we had also discussed that, currently we talk about achieving mastery over a certain subject if you've done 10,000 hours of it. But if you could tell us what the master, what the author of the Swarved has done, what immense effort he's put in, so that we can get an idea of really, how much research or how much of his own practical experiences he has put into the Swarved.
Yeah, I'm glad that you've mentioned that. If I could be honest, I feel the Swarved is an ultra compressed version of one person's experience, and it's universal and timeless experience. But the author of the Swarved has compressed, decades of spiritual experience into 3,000 verses. And I personally feel that we could probably write, entire books about the author himself. So if we were to really look at, who wrote the Swarved, he's our master, the founder of Vihangam Yoga, Anant, Shree, Sadguru, Sadafal Devji Maharaj. And, what I'll try and do is kind of illustrate his journey over the next, maybe 5 minutes or so. Feel free to jump in at any point, Raghavji, if I maybe gloss over some points. But, the Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj, he started his journey when he was very young. And we hear a lot of stories about spiritual masters who have left, positions of extreme privilege in society. So, kings and queens and royalty who, become very spiritually curious, and they leave behind a life of much wealth and much achievement, and they go to the jungle, they go to a master and they seek wisdom. Sadguru Sadafal Maharaj was a bit different in this regard. Obviously everyone has a different definition of what wealth is and what, achievements are. But he was from a very remote part of India, from a very small village, called Bakri in Balia, Uttar Pradesh. And, he didn't start with anything really. He didn't start with riches. He didn't start with much material achievements or anything like that. He just started with a very simple curiosity that, I want to know who the Supreme is and I want to be with him. And that was the only thing he had in his mind. He didn't have anything else in mind. And, he went around to everyone in his community. He explored as much as he could, and he decided ultimately, I need to go on this journey. I have this goal. I have this thirst. I need to fulfill it. And if you were to try and reenact his journey, you would have to go to your front door right now and leave and not have a plan and you just leave and you go and you're in search of the Supreme. There's no internet, mind you. There's no technology. This is in, the 1880s when this journey would have began. And he's going on this journey, he's exploring, he's trying to answer this question. Who is the Supreme and how do I achieve the Supreme? So already you can see there's a lot of courage there. And mind you, I haven't even mentioned that he went to the front door and he left at the age of 11. So you would have to reenact this at the age of 11, when most of us are, let's say, exploring different things in our life. So his journey began at that age, at that tender age. He went, to every master he could find in India. So he on foot, he would travel kilometers and kilometers seeking this knowledge. And he achieved Siddhi of many different disciplines. So Siddhi being a word which carries this connotation of mastery and also of, a certain, power, let's say. So if you achieve Siddhi in something, you achieve mastery of it and all of the powers which come with mastery of that thing. So he achieved Siddhi of many things. He practiced many different disciplines. Asana, which is the practice of, physical exercises. Pranayams, which is exercises focused on the life forces, the pranas. Different bandhas, mudras, different yogs. He mastered each and every one of these. And, he reached this state where he had all these different things in his availability. He was harmonized with the laws of Prakriti and he could evoke certain things as, people of these disciplines can. And, a short anecdote which we hear as practitioners is, in one of these practices, he would be asked to chant a mantra millions of times, and he would, chant it an order of magnitude more, hundreds of millions of times. And he'd attained all these things, but he still wasn't content. And at this point, we really have to ask ourselves, what kind of person is this? Why is he doing this? And it's all the same as where he began. His goal was very clear and he had a clear desire to reach that goal. And if I could just pause for a moment, I've had the distinct pleasure of listening to different discourses from the current, lineage of Sadguru in Vihangam Yoga, Sadguru Sultanatha Devji Maharaj. And he explains to us that there's three kinds of people in the world. And while I'm saying this, I'm kind of reflecting on myself as well. And what he says is that there's three kinds of people. One, the kind of person who never starts something that is good for them. So they never reach that point. They only, let's say, kind of disturb themselves in things which they know aren't necessarily good for them, but they continue on that path. The second is people who start good things, but as soon as there's an obstacle, they stop. So, they start on a path, and as soon as something comes in the way, they stop pursuing that path. And, if I was to be honest, that's been me many times. And the third is the kind of person who, if they choose a path, they stick with it to the end. And this third kind of person is known as a Mahatma. There's that word Mahatma, if you're of, Indian background, and even if you are not, Mahatma Gandhi is a great example as well of a person who was determined till the very end. So at this point, we kind of see that, Sadguru Sadafal Maharaj is really this third kind of person. He's continuing to pursue his path, and he's not content even though he's achieving all these different things. And, as he proceeded on this journey, one day he's meditating and he has an experience where, an effulgent voice tells him that, with these practices, you will never reach the Supreme. And, he's very sorry, he's very sullied, he's very, obviously saddened, because he knows this, he's self-aware that he's not reaching his goal, and the voice disappears. So the story continues that, and I don't want to go and, take too much time on this, but the story continues that he continued his journey. And at one point he was doing yoga for 16, 17 hours a day, which if you reflect on it for a moment is double the amount of hours we do at work every day. And he didn't take weekends off, mind you. So he's continuing this journey. And eventually the eternal master, the Nityananda Sadguru Dev, he instructs him into the practice of meditation, after which he spends 17 years pursuing that meditation. And to put that into perspective just shortly, that's 6,205 days, approximately 140,000 hours. That's almost an entire slice of one's life. So adolescence, adulthood, middle age, old age. And as you kind of referred to, Raghavji, in your question, modern science tells us we need 10,000 hours to practice something. So he, exceeded that by a magnitude of 14. And that's just looking at the numbers very roughly. I kind of had to as a practicing engineer. And it's difficult also to equate a moment of time in spiritual experience with a moment of time in the physical world, mind you. So, it's an immense amount of time. And some of you may think it's obsession, but really the right word here would be determination of a yogi. And we finally kind of reach where we started, which is who is the author of this book. And his name is Anant Shree Abhyasit Sadguru Dev, Sadguru Sadafal Maharaj. So if I was to just unfurl that a bit, Anant Shree kind of means, in the Indian kind of culture, we have this honorific of Shree. And if you go Shree, you say, you're showing even double the respect, let's say. And if you go Anant Shree, that is, limitless Shrees before his name. So it's kind of capturing this unending reverence for where he reached. And throughout his life, he was referred to as a Mahatma, a Maharshi, an Avadhut, Fakir, Sant, and finally Anant Shree. So that's kind of capturing the first part of his name. Then we have Abhyas Siddh. Abhyas meaning practice. Siddh meaning a person who's achieved siddhi, who's achieved mastery of something, as I alluded to earlier. And, Abhyas Siddh, to my interpretation and understanding, means a person who's achieved mastery over the process of practice itself. So what this means is he can go to any path in the world, and on the basis of practice, because he's acquired siddhi of practice itself, he can achieve mastery of any skill in the world. And if you look at the numbers, 107 billion people have existed in the physical world since the dawn of time, if you estimate it. And that doesn't even include all the innumerable souls who have not achieved a body. And of all of these people who have come into existence and who have not come into existence, there's only one such person who has achieved this name of Abhyas Siddh. And that is Sadguru Sadafal Maharaj. So what this really brings out is the uniqueness of his determination. And it's not even the uniqueness, it's the oneness, because there is no other person or soul who has achieved this. And finally, we get this Sadguru, which was referred to earlier. So he's not just the guru of the prakritic domain, of the material domain. He's also a guru of the conscious domain and beyond. So he's a person who can take you to a state of conscious oneness with the Supreme. Then we go to Sadafal Dev. So as the current Sadguru Dev says, Sadguru Swatantra Devji Maharaj, as he explained in one of his Amritwanis, in one of his discourses, there's some entities of the world which provide you with phal, with fruits on a seasonal basis. So, you go to some trees, they will grow their fruits in certain parts of the year. And similarly, different gods and goddesses as well. We pray to them for specific things. But here we have a Sadguru, an entity whose name is Sadafal. So a person who can provide you with all fruits at all times. So that is another point of uniqueness. And then we have Maharaj, which is, if you look at Indian history as well, this word is used a lot. a great king, one who stands above all. So an arbiter of the highest spiritual status. So, it's important to understand this is referring to his spiritual status, in that he stands above one and all. So this person, if you look at every word, yeah.
Yes, indeed, Abhinavji. So the interesting part is, from what I have understood from a study of the history of Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj's lineage, was that he was born into a family that had great distinguished accomplishments of yogis having been born at various stages, and into this particular lineage he was born. So there's a great legacy of knowledge, of devotion that was there in his family, and that he took this up at such a young age, and that he was so very different from other children of his age, in that he had great maturity, and he would conduct sessions in which he would give discourses much before he gained the authority of the Sadguru. So right from his very childhood, he was a very different child, one who was bent on spiritual pursuits, and who would also have these inclinations that became more in depth at as time progressed. And just like you put it so very well, I understand that in his years of penance, he would go into such deep penance that for days and days and days, and even months on end, he would be in this advanced stage of meditation where you would have, I understand that even, snakes have bitten him, but there has been no change to him at all. And even their poison was completely rendered infectious and completely worthless. And so that is that level of meditation that he's been into for so many elongated periods of time. What would you think about this, Abhinavji? Would you agree with this?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really brings out, the uniqueness of his practice. And, he was also, unlike, let's say, the popular belief that yogis are away from society, after he attained the status of Sadguru, he fought for the independence of India with a lot of heart and a lot of struggle. And the Swarved actually emerged during this time when he was fighting for the independence of India. So he developed the framework for Swarved between the 22nd of December 1920 to the 12th of October 1922. And then from there, he would go to the different points where he meditated, and he started to write this book called the Swarved and put it together. And he finished it in 1938, and he wrote it when he was in his 50s. But today, it's one of the most unique books you can ever come across because of all the things you just mentioned, Raghuvji.
And in fact, the fact that, for example, if I have difficulty, and I have a lot of difficulty in understanding many of the verses of Swarved, but when I read the commentary that's given by Acharya Shri Prathamji, so that commentary, if you could, tell us a little more about, why it explains it so well, it makes things so much simpler that it's easy for anyone who knows Hindi to understand. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, Abhinavji.
Yeah, so the important thing here is, you've got a rhyming couplet written by Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj, which is then being expanded upon by Sadguru Dharamchandra Devji Maharaj. So it's Sadguru's kind of invoking their own experiences. And that is the key point. And just as you mentioned, like the commentary is very much in accessible Hindi. For myself, I haven't had an education in Hindi, but as I try and work through it, I'm able to sort of get there, like slowly, I'm able to get there. And the Swarved covers topics all the way from top to bottom. So, the mind and Brahm, the soul, Akshar Brahm, Sadguru, the supreme, time, Sushman, Kundalini, stages of meditation, the reverberating words, birth and death, salvation, worship, goals of human life, everything is in there. And thankfully, each of these verses are expanded upon in very accessible Hindi by Sadguru Dhamchandra Dev Ji Maharaj, and the Uttarad, the final most secretive kind of mandal, to my knowledge, has been expanded upon by Sadguru Sultan Dev Ji Maharaj. So, we're in very experienced hands, thankfully. These are people, if you call them people, these are individuals who have these experiences in front of them.
Absolutely. And the best part is that the Uttararth is available in English, and we have copies of it in various parts of the world. So people who want to understand Vihangam Yoga from a much deeper perspective can obtain a copy of the Uttararth. And it's a wonderful journey because it encapsulates, it summarizes, or it takes into grasp many of the key points of the Swarved, of the larger Swarved itself. So that is a good starting point also for advanced practitioners who are able to fathom something of spirituality, but really haven't gone into the great depth that they've always wanted to. Taking now this particular session, Abhinavji, forward for listeners who joined in a little late. So this is part of a five-part series on the Swarved, which is the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Secrets that we are discussing, that was authored by Sri Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj. And discussing this, I've been joined by Abhinavji from Australia. So as you have already heard in our previous sessions, the Swarved is that guiding book that gives you a very practical and a demonstrative understanding, a very calibrated understanding of what spirituality is. Unlike, in others, I have great respect for other practitioners and other teachers, but I understand that when a particular question is put to them on a higher spiritual plane, and you expect an authoritative answer, the answers that we get from so many other teachers is very wishy-washy. They completely take the context out of the question, and you realize that they have not really answered your question. But today, even if you put this question to the Swarved on a particular spiritual point, that I have had, say, for example, such spiritual experiences, how do I go further? Or what do these spiritual experiences mean? Or what is nature? What is the Supreme Soul? And, why should I be doing it? Who is the Sadguru? Who is the Sadguru, and how does this journey really play out? And the Swarved gives it in such great detail that you would truly be baffled, and you would say that, okay, yes, this is indeed the book that I was looking for. So it's really incumbent on us, if we want to take a spiritual journey forward, to really seek out the Swarved and the Vihangam Yoga organization, which is all the contact details are available on the www.vihangamyoga.org website. We also have a website in the US, which is us.vihangamyoga.org, if I'm not mistaken. So please do contact us. May I now request a final roundup of today's discussions from Abhinavji before we before we go into the Shanti part, which marks the end of this particular day's session.
Sure. So, as we've kind of looked at today, we dove really into today the author of Swarved, so that we can kind of lay the groundwork for what the Swarved is. And the most unique things here to really take away are that the Swarved encapsulates the experiences of a yogi. And it's unique in that it is not an intellectual exercise. It is a description of experience. And it is my hope that all of you listening are able to interact with the Swarved through your own experiences, which is very much the reason for which it was written and the motivations behind its inception. So thanks for having me today, and thanks for such a great conversation, Raghavji.
Thank you, Abhinavji. That encapsulates the first of the 5-part series on the Swarved, a treasure trove of spiritual secrets that was authored by an immensely gifted soul, super soul, you could say, Sri Sadguru Sadafal Devji, who was the first of the current lineage of Sadgurus, and he was born into an accomplished family of yogis, of Rajarshis. He had great accomplished yogis and saints such as Rajarshi Baba Lalji Rao in his family as his ancestors. They had illustrious sages such as Jangli Baba, Nath Baba, and Bulaki Das Baba. So for all people of those who are interested in knowing the antiquity of this particular concept of what is illustrated in the Swarved, it comes to us from a very empowered family that has had many accomplished yogis, and amongst, I would humbly put it that amongst the greatest of them would be Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj. And once a particular exalted status of a Sadguru is reached, all Sadgurus really are one and the same, and there is no distinction between any of them. The Sadguru himself has authored the Swarved, this wonderful encyclopedia of spiritual secrets, and a Sadguru has then gone on to explain these spiritual secrets. So that is his son has explained the spiritual secrets in such great lucid depth that for all of us who have questions that are unanswered, you can find the answers most probably in the Swarved. If you stay with us in this series, we hope to explore this further. Thank you so much then, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us from whichever part of the world that you are in, and wish you a wonderful evening or a great day ahead. Thank you.
Sadafal Shantimay Shanti Shanti Sukh Shanti